Hi Newham, my name is Adiba Jaigirdar. I'm the author of the Henna Wars here and also the upcoming Honey and Issues Guide to Fake Dating. Thank you so much for inviting me to celebrate Newham LGBT History Month with all of you. I'm really excited to be speaking to you today. I am a former teacher. I used to teach ESL and I am obsessed with video games. I'm obsessed with books. Obviously, I love reading. Um, and I'm also obsessed with collecting lipstick. I have a very wide collection. I'm from Bangladesh and I'm also from Dublin, Ireland. I've lived in Dublin for most of my life since I was 10 years old, so this is where I grew up. I wanted to speak a little bit about my debut, the Henna Wars. So the Henna Wars is about Nishat, who is Bangladeshi Muslim, and she is a lesbian. At the beginning of the book, she decides to come out to her parents, um, but they respond with silence. So she's dealing with the fallout of that. At the same time, an old friend of hers called Flavia returns to her school, and both of them set up rival henna businesses. But Nishat also has a crush on Flavia. So she's dealing with the fallout of coming out to her parents, she's dealing with her feelings for Flavia, and she's also dealing with the fact that she resents her for culturally appropriating from Bangladeshi culture. I was inspired to write this book because henna is a really big part of my culture. When I was a kid, we used to have a henna plant outside my grandmother's apartment in Bangladesh. And I remember me and my cousins would go out and we would pick the leaves from the plant and we would come back. We would grind it up and make our own henna paste, and then we would use toothpicks to put henna on our hands. Um, so henna, if it is a part of your culture, you probably know that it's often used for celebratory events like weddings or for Eid. But henna is also a part of our everyday lives. I would watch my mom use it on her hair to keep it healthy, or I would watch my uncles put it on their facial hair in order to dye it red. So henna has always been a big part of my life. It's just been something that's a part of my culture. And then when I moved to Dublin, Ireland, I kind of saw how people here view it very differently. It's not really a part of their life. And I guess I felt a little bit othered because henna was a part of my life. Um, and while I was dealing with that, later on I also saw that people liked henna, they liked the henna designs, so they kind of picked and chose what parts of my culture they liked and when they liked it, which is not a great feeling to have when you come from that culture. So this idea came to me when I was in Bangladesh for a summer visiting my grandmother, and I thought, wouldn't it be super cool if I wrote this book and it kind of explored henna and somebody's relationship to henna. And then I thought, well, what if she had this henna business, but there was this conflict with another girl who she also liked. I love like rivals to lovers, that trope. I think it's super fun. It adds a lot of drama. And I really wanted to do it with two girls because I thought it would be really fun. I haven't really read a book like that before. So mostly I just wanted to write this really fun book that also gave some insight into my culture. I had a lot of fun writing it. I really just wanted to make myself laugh, make myself happy, and I wanted to write a happy ending for these two girls who really liked each other. So that was kind of my inspiration and my motivation for writing this book. Like I said, The Henna Wars is my debut novel, so I really wrote it all by myself. I started writing it in January 2018, and it took me about 3 months to write my first draft. I really did not like my first draft. It was very messy. I am something called a pantser when I write. So a pantser is basically someone who goes into writing without any plans. So I had this very big idea of what I wanted the book to be, and who these characters were, and then I just sat down and I took 3 months to write this first draft. And after I had my draft written, I read it over and I thought about everything that could have been done better. So I took another couple of months and I basically rewrote the entire book. But I think it was a lot stronger after that. And so, as I didn't have an agent, I didn't have a publisher, I just sent it to a lot of my friends who were also POC, who were also queer or Muslim, or all of those together. And they read it and they gave me a lot of feedback. So, again, I sat down and I did a lot of revising. I think the book went through about 5 drafts before I searched for an agent. And then, after I got my agent, I revised it again. After I got my editor, I revised it 2 more times. And then finally it was ready to be published. So yeah, the book went through a lot of revision. I'm sure, if you've heard from other writers, they will tell you that writing is really about rewriting. Writing your first draft, I know my first drafts are always very messy. They need a lot of work. Sometimes they need to be completely rewritten, but first drafts are really just about getting your idea out there and getting everything from your mind onto the paper, because until I do that, I feel like my story isn't really going anywhere. I can't revise something that is a blank piece of paper. So once the book was all written, it was all revised, obviously it was ready to go out into the world. It has this beautiful cover, and I got to help choose the illustrator. I recommended a few illustrators to my publisher, and this illustrator, his name is, it's written on the back, Nabigal Nagam Haider Ali. He also did this cover for Honey and Issue. He's very talented. So I got my early cover sketches for the book, for the cover of the book. We traded some notes with the illustrator, and then we finally had this beautiful final cover. Obviously the book came out in the middle of this pandemic, in the middle of this lockdown. So it's been an interesting process. I think all authors who debuted during this time will have a very unique experience of publishing. It was definitely difficult to know if people would be reading the book, if the people who I wanted to reach it, like students, would actually be able to get it, because when the book came out, schools were closed, libraries were all closed. They still are, I believe. So it was difficult because I didn't really know what would happen with the book, but I was really proud of it. I am really proud of it, and I'm really glad that I'm really glad to see that it's going out into the world and that it is reaching its intended audience. And I'm really happy that everybody, me and my publishing team, have been able to help it do that. My upcoming novel is called Honey and Issues Guide to Fake Dating. It's about 2 Bengali girls who decide to fake date. One of them because she feels like she has to prove her bisexuality to her friends who invalidate her, and the other because she wants to impress her parents by becoming head girl and she needs to become popular. But as their fake relationship starts to become something real, they have to figure out if they're willing to make a few sacrifices in order to get their happily ever after. So, Honey and Issues Guide to Fake Dating, the inspiration for it is something that I call actually hate-spiration. So, hate-spiration is essentially when you watch or read or consume a piece of media and you think, something about it was not done right, or it was problematic, or it just did not work for you. This happens to me quite a lot because there's a lot of pieces of media out there that I think doesn't deal with POC or queer characters or both very well. So this book was hate-inspired by a TV show called Faking It, which was on MTV quite a while ago. And if you don't know Faking It, It's about these two girls who decide that they're going to pretend that they're in a relationship in order to become popular in their very liberal school in America. So as they start their fake relationship, what happens is one of them realizes that she is actually gay and that she has feelings for her best friend, the person that she is pretending to be in a relationship with. But the best friend never really returns her feelings. There's not really a happily ever after for this character who is exploring her sexuality. She doesn't really get to celebrate her queerness ever. For the entirety of the show, she is kind of pining after her friend, which really frustrated me because even though I know that a lot of queer people might have this experience, it was quite sad to me that this is kind of the only representation that we ever get for sapphic women specifically. So after watching that show, I really thought about how I want to write something similar, something that uses the fake dating trope and it centers to queer women, and I wanted it to be completely different from this TV show. I wanted it to give the two girls a happily ever after. I wanted them to not be using fake dating as a way to explore their sexuality, but for them to already be aware of their sexuality before they go into the fake dating. So obviously the inspiration for this book came in a completely different way than it did for the Henna Wars. I love the fake dating trope, so that was one of the reasons why I really wanted to explore it. So to come up with the idea, I kind of sat down and I wrote down exactly what I wanted this book to be, and that was the fake dating trope with two girls. It was two characters who already knew their sexuality, and then I had to ask myself a lot of questions. So I had to ask, why would two girls specifically want to enter into a fake relationship, especially in an all-girls Catholic school in Ireland, when they might have to deal with homophobia. What exactly could push them to do those things? And I came up with the answer that one of them wants to become popular and one of them is trying to deal with biphobia from her friends. And this is how I came up with these characters and with this story. My experience with writing Honey and Issue was completely different from my experience of writing the Henna Wars, just because I wasn't really doing it alone anymore. I knew that this book was going to be published. I knew I had an editor and I had an agent, and I knew that they had some expectations of what I could write. But because my publishing team and my agent, they're amazing and they're very supportive, I knew that they would love a story like this. So I sat down and I just wrote the book. It really just poured out of me. I think probably because so much of it came from experiences that I had. In the book, Honey, one of the main characters, has to deal with a lot of biphobia from her friends, which is a familiar experience to me and people that I know. She also has to deal with Islamophobia, and then Issue, the other character, has to deal with a lot of racism. So all of these things, are very familiar to me, and when I was writing it, I felt like I was really exploring a lot of things that I had dealt with in my life. But also at the same time, the book is celebrating queerness and it's celebrating Bengali culture. The two characters are both Bengali. One of them is Bengali Bangladeshi and one of them is Bengali Indian. One of them speaks Shuddha Bangla, one of them speaks Sylheti. So as I was writing these characters, I wanted them to be polar opposites to each other, and I wanted them to really show how there are multiple experiences of being Bengali, of being South Asian, of being queer, and of experiencing all of these different things that we experience. I actually ended up writing the book in about 30 days. It was the fastest that I have ever written a book, I think, and it was quite long as well. It was, I think my first draft was about 70,000 words, so I wrote 70,000 words in 30 days. And after I finished writing it, I sent it to some of my beta readers or critique partners. Again, people who are POC, who are queer, Muslim, or all of those. And they gave me some feedback. I used their feedback, and then it was off to my editor. And we did one round of revision, and then, it was ready for publishing. In my books, I try to write about characters who look like me. One of the major reasons why I do this is because when I was growing up, when I was a teenager, I didn't really see any characters in books that looked like me. I didn't actually see any characters who looked like me in any media until I decided to write it myself. But thankfully, we're seeing a lot more representation in books, and I hope that we see a lot more in the coming years. So when I was growing up, I did see a few TV shows or movies that had queer characters or that had South Asian characters, but a lot of them didn't really reflect my experience. And at the same time, a lot of them actually showed very negative stereotypes and actually was harmful to me. So shows where queer characters never got happy endings, they would fall in love and then immediately something bad would happen to them, as if their queerness is the reason why they didn't deserve a happily ever after, which is really sad. So things like that, made me internalize a lot of really negative things about myself, and about my identities. And I think this still happens. I think a lot of people, they never really see a reflection of themselves in any kind of media, and it means that they often internalize really harmful ideas. They feel very lonely in the world. They feel like nobody is sharing their experience. But obviously, there are people who share these experiences. There are people who have these marginalized identities. And this is one of the reasons why I think representation is so important in books, and proper representation, own voices. I think that when we allow marginalized authors to write these books that are about their marginalization, whether it's exploring traumatic things that happen to them, or it's about celebrating, or it's a mixture of both. I think it's really important that we see that in the media, that we see that in books, because all of us need to see a reflection of ourselves, and all of us need to use that. All of us need to see that reflection to remember that we are not alone and that we are not going through our experiences on our own. There are so many people who share each of these marginalizations, and all of us have a different experience of the world, but we also have similarities. So even though I spoke about being hate-inspired, there is a lot of media that is very inspirational to me. First of all, I love listening to music. Music is a very important part of my writing process. I have playlists for all of my books, which you can actually find on my website. And I create those playlists primarily for myself, because when I get stuck in my writing, when I have a difficult time getting into my character's voice, I often go back and I listen to this music. So two of my favorite artists who I listen to a lot while writing the Henna Wars and also Honey and Issue are Janelle Monáe and Hayley Kiyoko. So I listen to a lot of Janelle Monáe's Dirty Computer and a lot of Hayley Kiyoko's Expectations, which are two fantastic albums in my opinion, and they're very sapphic. So they're very, very inspirational. There are also a lot of books that give me a lot of joy and a lot of inspiration. As I said, I'm really glad that now we have a lot more diverse literature. So I would love to recommend a few. So first of all, this book, Cinderella is Dead by Kaylin Bayron, is a fantastic retelling of Cinderella, which looks at a misogynistic society which operates from the story of Cinderella, using Cinderella as a model in order to oppress and harm women in this society. And it's about these two girls who basically team up to fight the patriarchy in this world. It is fantastic, and it has this beautiful cover as well. One of my biggest inspirations as an author is Sandhya Menon. She wrote When Dimple Met Rishi. But this is actually my favorite book by her, From Twinkle with Love. It's this book about a filmmaker who starts working on a film project with her crush's brother, and she unexpectedly starts developing feelings for him. But at the same time, she's also getting these secret love letters, and she's trying to figure out if they're from her crush, and she's just trying to figure out her feelings while also trying to make this film. I also love this book, The Sound of Stars by Alicia Dow. It's this amazing science fiction novel, also a beautiful cover. It's this amazing science fiction novel, and it has a black sapphic main character, and it's about this world where or it's about our world after it has been invaded by aliens called the Ilori, and the main character, Ellie, is basically running a secret library because anything that elicits emotions is now banned in the world. So she's running this illegal library, and there's an alien called Morris who loves listening to human music, even though that is also illegal. And the two of them team up, go on a road trip to try and save the world. And another sapphic book that I love is Late to the Party by Kelly Quinlan, which is about this girl who is kind of a wallflower, and she meets this guy outside of a party very randomly, and they become friends, and she starts to have these new experiences, and it's just fantastic. All of these books are fantastic, so I recommend you check all of them out. So if you are a writer, I would love to give you a few writing tips. I would recommend, first of all, reading a lot. Whenever I get stuck in my writing, I go back to books that I love or books that I'm really looking forward to. A lot of writers don't like reading books in their genre when they're stuck, but I love reading books in my genre when I'm stuck. It helps me kind of recognize what I'm aiming for. It helps me get into the voice of my characters. So whatever works for you, whatever you like reading, I would recommend, if you're feeling stuck or if you want to write, to read a lot of books. Read books in your genre, read books outside of your genre, whatever works for you. I would also recommend not worrying too much when you're writing your first draft. For a lot of people, first drafts are very messy, and that's okay. I know that my first drafts are incredibly messy. As I said, I'm a pantser, so I don't usually plan a lot of things. I just go in and I write. And so I have to do a lot of revision, I have to do a lot of rewriting most of the time, and that's okay. As I said, writing is really rewriting. I revised the Henna Wars like 5, 6, 7 times. I'm not even sure how many times by the end. And that's part of the process. With every single revision you do, your writing will get better, and you will see your characters and your story in a new light. You might be able to see new layers to it. So revisions only just make you a better writer. And the third writing tip I want to give you is to just have fun with writing. I think that sometimes we get so caught up in this idea of writing the perfect book that we forget that, it's supposed to be really enjoyable. So I would just say, make sure you're enjoying your writing, that you are having fun, and, don't be afraid to think out of the box, put something random in there just because it's what you want to write. I always do that, and sometimes I have to cut it out, but that's okay. One of the things that I really wanted to write with both the Henna Wars and Honey and Issue, I love writing scenes in the rain. I love writing romantic scenes in the rain. I feel like cis het characters always get this. They get all of these romantic scenes in like different situations, and a lot of scenes, in the rain where there's an umbrella or they're like wet, and they have like a confession and they kiss or whatever. And I really wanted to write that for the Henna Wars and Honey and Issue. It was just something fun that I wanted to do, and I did do it. And you know, these scenes in the rain, they're in both the Henna Wars, in Honey and Issue. If my editors keep letting me write it, I will write them into like a bunch of other books if I can. So that's just something fun that I like to do. So I would just recommend, you know, have fun with your writing. Put in the things that you want to put in just because it's fun for you. Don't get too serious. Yeah, just enjoy it. I would love to share a little bit of my writing process with you. So I am a writer who doesn't really believe in routines. I know a lot of people kind of swear by them. They want to recreate this idea that they are doing a job and try to have like the 9 to 5 um, at their desk working like it's their job, getting dressed. I do not like to do that. Um, I don't write every day, and I don't try to recreate a work like atmosphere when I'm writing. I write kind of whenever, um, and I write also kind of wherever. I write at my desk, I write in my bed, I write on the floor sometimes. I like to change it up, even the hours of the day where I work, just because that helps me feel more creative. Um, and there are days, you know, when I'm very busy doing other things, so I don't need to write. I give myself breaks between projects because it's important to refill the creative well, I think. Um, I really like my writing process. I've tried a bunch of different things, and that has worked for other writers, but it doesn't really work for me. So I think, you know, if you want to write, I would say try and figure out what is your writing process, what works for you. For some people, it's definitely, you know, writing every day or writing at the same place. But for me, that's definitely not the case. Um, and after I'm finished writing a novel or anything else, I usually try to send it to a few of my friends who are my critique partners. I also read for them and we trade feedback. This is really important to me because I have a few diverse critique partners. So, you know, whether they're queer or they're POC or they're Muslim, or different identities, I think it really helps me get varied perspectives. They're also writers themselves, so we can help each other out. We can help make each other better writers. I think it's really important to be able to do this, to be able to share your work with people, to receive feedback, because when you receive feedback, you become a better writer. Um, so I would, you know, recommend if anybody wants to be a writer here, to go and try and find some friends who can help you by giving you feedback, and maybe you can help them by giving them feedback as well. It's a very important part of the writing process. And as I said before, I love writing from my own experiences, and I love writing characters who share my experiences. Um, but you know, I try to write a lot of diverse characters, whether you know they're side characters or main characters. And obviously, I am only one person, so it's really good to get, you know, different perspectives from different kinds of readers, and to see what other people think of these characters, and you know how they explore the world or what their perspective of the world is like. I think it's really important as a writer to be able to get different people's perspectives, whether this is coming from your friends, from your agent or your editor, or you know sometimes even from readers telling us how they felt reading the book, and how they connected with it. I really love hearing from readers as well. So thank you so much, Newham, for having me, for inviting me to speak to all of you. It was really great getting a chance to celebrate LGBT History Month with all of you. I hope you're all doing really well. So thank you and bye.